Okay, so let's go ahead and get started, everybody. I'm Lynn Randle. My partner in crime over here is Hans Kuschnerus. And we have several guests with us today to talk about change that they managed to accomplish here in our community. To my right is Dan Watson. He'll be talking about the Talbot Integrity Project. And Elaine Tama and Lynn Randle will be talking about the plastic bag initiative that was just recently passed. And Bob DeGore over here in the other corner. Bob, say something.
I have glasses on today because my pupils are still dilated. Glad that the police didn't pull me over on the way because they would pull me in for drugs abuse. But I just had it anyway.
And Bob will, because last meeting, we decided amongst all of us that the issue we wanted to talk about was the failures of, how to help education, how to make education work for all these kids who've fallen behind. And it's interesting, Bob is the person who'll come up next after we discuss that issue as a group and take a look at Hans's structured, compelling proposal for framing this. But Bob will come up and he'll be talking about an education issue that he tackled down in St. Michael's. So let me go forward here.
Could I add something?
Yeah.
I just would like to review that on day one, we explored why there's so much divisiveness and came to the realization in our discussion, the slides that we had, that you need to start change close to home and you need to be personally involved. The change isn't going to happen unless somebody takes the initiative, and typically it's a small group in a local community that can make change. We then went through the process of what I call facilitated dialogue, which is a process for problem solving, one of many, but the one that I like most. And we brought in Lynn's example of passive green spaces to show just how much data you have to collect before you really can get going. Today, the plan is to have 3 efforts presented that went through a similar process, I assume had some of the same elements. And 2 of them have been successful, and I think 1 is still on the way. We'll find out. And then if time permits, we will work on trying to write an objective for the process that we chose, which was better education.
Oh, you didn't want to start with that?
No.
Okay.
Let's make sure that we get the presenters giving us the 3 examples of what can be achieved if you put your mind to it.
Okay, I need a better view of that. Yes.
So that means
Yeah, just 1 second here. Yeah.
Am I on the other back?
So now we get to, this one is now you all remember the structured approach called, with the acronym of OBACRA, right? Yep.
That is just an acronym for a document.
To make it easy to remember.
You could, that's the one I remember. You could come up with any acronym, but a document needs to have structure and it needs to have those elements in it. Otherwise, we miss the opportunity to have a sales document.
So Bob, we'll start with you at Summer STEM Camp, and he's got he has a PowerPoint that he wants to show, or
Do you have it?
we can. So he wants that. And here.
While they're loading the PowerPoint, there is a handout that I brought. This was just published.
I'm sorry.
Just published earlier this week. National Scorecard on Education.
Only one
Kind of timely for what
No,
we're going to discuss.
to operate that one, you'll need to just point it right over here where the
Got it.
thing is.
Okay. So I'm not going to talk too much about this, but I brought this as a reference point where we really have failed our youngest generations. Not only is this scorecard talk about specifically about what has happened since or during the pandemic, but the education secretary just yesterday said, we've had these profound problems even before the pandemic started. We're really failing America's children. So again, this is for your reference. There are 2 links here at the bottom of the front page. If you want to go ahead and look at that.
And so Bob, afterwards, can you email that to everybody?
I will do that. Okay, so I have 15 minutes, so I'm starting to stop. Okay, so we call this structured compelling proposal, and let's see.
You have to point this way.
Okay, see. Try it again. Which one am I hitting? The arrow?
Yeah.
Yes. There we go. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit like problem-solving speed dating. Supposed to be funny, but
I don't get the joke yet.
well,
Maybe it will come to me.
there are many layers to this. There are many layers to this problem, and so we're going to be talking about this in 15 minutes or less. I'll be sounding like the FedEx guy on the FedEx commercials. Okay, here we go. If I can get this to go. There we go. There we go. So objective is to improve the academic profile of public school children. That's what I looked at. And I'm going to go ahead and look at the background. So I'm in and out of high schools here on the Delmarva Peninsula. I read an article several years ago from the Baltimore Sun that said mean SATs here in Maryland are 490 and 495. Interesting enough, each year, the mean SAT across the country, the top of the bell curve, is at 500. So we're underachieving in this state to boot. If you take the Beltway communities out of that mix, we're doing horribly. If I did my job that badly, or if a baseball player did their job that badly, they would be fired. They'd be sent down to the minor leagues, and we're not doing an adequate job in a lot of ways. So in 2014, I happened to work for the Naval Academy Admissions Department. And in 2014, I noticed that there were 46 young men and women that were admitted to the Naval Academy from the other side of the bag. And one from the Delmarva Peninsula. So what are we doing differently here? Well, there's 46, mostly come from private schools or really schools from affluent communities. So what can we do? Well, I'll tell you a story. So when I was first assigned to Easton High School about 7 years ago, I made an appointment to go see the principal. I won't mention his name. It was 1 o'clock, it wasn't lunchtime, wasn't the end of the day, and they showed me in his office, and I wasn't invited to sit down. So I figured, well, I'll be like an NFL team, I'll give them my 2-minute drill. So I gave my 2-minute drill on how I can help that principal, his guidance department, and his faculty help his students get into Tier 1, Tier 2 universities, and in my case, in service academies. I've been doing this at the time I was doing this for 36 years or so. So I've been doing this for 4 decades or so. At the end of the 2-minute drill, he leans across his desk. He's still standing up. I'm still standing up. He leans across the desk and he says, "What do you expect? These kids are from the Eastern Shore."
Oh my gosh.
I was so angry, I could use stronger language right now. I was so angry when I left that building 15 minutes later, I was shaking. That fellow passed down his low expectations down to his faculty, his guidance office, and ultimately to his students. That's why we fail kids here on the Eastern Shore in too many ways. By the way, that's the largest high school here in this corner of the Delmarva Peninsula. Okay, so analysis. So one of the things I looked at is that if we try to fix things in STEM areas, in high school, in senior high school, it's too late. We've got to start this process a whole lot earlier. So my lovely wife said, well, why don't you start with middle schoolers?
Just to make sure everybody knows what STEM stands for, science, technology, engineering, and math.
Right.
It's not been around
Right,
that long.
and by the way, this problem is a problem for English too. So it's not
It's
English and
I'm
math.
just using that as an example.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think sometimes we have to look at blind spots. It's kind of ironic that I went to the eye doctor today, but scoutoma is a blind spot. So we have to recognize where our blind spots are. In other words, where is the real problem? And the real problem is really starting with kids earlier on. I went to workshop at the Office of Naval Research about a decade ago. And they brought in a number of speakers and they said, if we don't make a real change and get kids engaged by the 4th grade, they will never get it. They will always be behind the mathematics and science power curve. I've subsequently heard that. In fact, I was talking to a reading teacher down at St. Michael's in elementary school a couple of years ago, and she said, yeah, that's true. I noticed that kids by the 4th grade, if they're not doing well, her word, she says, they know they're not going to do much in their lifetime. And that profoundly bothered me. And so I moved forward to try and make a difference. So, it's too easy to talk about the problem. This gets back to what Hans just talked about a little while ago. It's too easy to talk about it. There are a lot of people who talk about problems, but they never do anything, especially bureaucrats, people who go to cubicles in Washington, D.C., they talk about stuff, but they never do anything.
Or they study it.
So I'm on a WebEx.
Cubicle person, excuse me.
I'm sorry?
I'm a former cubicle
Okay,
person.
I don't mean to be
in
offensive. I am offensive sometimes, but that's okay. But I'm referring to
I
these
take
things.
it you resemble this remark.
Pardon?
I take it you resemble this remark.
So what I'm getting at is that, so I'm on a WebEx with these folks from the Office of Naval Research. They've been tasked by the Chief of Naval Operations to set up STEM across the country in 2014. In 2015, I'm on this WebEx. And they roll out this plan they've been working on for over 4 years. And so I tell you what, I'll beta test it. And on WebEx, you can see people's eyes really well. Their pupils dilated like mine are right now. And they're thinking, my goodness, my underworked, overpaid job is going to go away if this guy makes it successful. They cut me off. With this football, they clotheslined me. That was it. End of the deal. I said, screw it, I'm going to do it. So I went forward with the STEM program, STEM program here in Talbot County. So I established the Talbot STEM Camp. And I had two levels of objectives. One, we targeted elementary school kids, and the emphasis was really science and learning is fun. In high schools, I turned this into a leadership laboratory.
Brilliant.
And if we can get the video at the end here, I'm still only at 7 minutes. We'll hear
Talking
three young
faster doesn't
people,
count, Bob.
3 young people describe the leadership laboratory. So this is the group of first graders with McConan.
So, excuse me, Bob, Claudia has a question.
I have a question. In the earlier slide, Bob, you said that you were going to start with middle school, but in this one, you're talking about elementary and high school. I think I'm missing a link there.
I like the way you think. I made a jump. You know, this is kind of a education speed dating, so I can't get into all the details. I do involve some middle schoolers. For the most part, we need to get to the young kids, and then we leap forward to the big kids. The big kids are the STEM. I can teach science and technology experiments all day long, but I'm a 72-year-old guy, and 1st to 5th graders don't relate to me. I'm older than their grandfathers, probably. So we recruited high school kids to be the instructors. And so part of my objective is part of my objective is for these little kids to say, I want to be just like McConan. I want to be just like Jill. I want to be like them when I grow up. And so there are many, again, we can't talk about all this is really kind of complex, but there are a lot of layers to this in terms of leadership and in terms of inspiration and those sorts of things. So here McConan is these are first graders, and they're talking about aerodynamics. We've handled Newton's 3 laws of physics to elementary school kids. What I learned at the Office of Naval Research for these education experts who came in and said, never put down the fact that these little kids can understand the big words used and the big concepts that you present to them.
Who and what facility did you get to host this?
Thank you for asking. That's probably my next slide.
Oh, okay.
Good story.
There we go. See? Hans oversaw this, no, he didn't. So my partnerships are the Talbot County Public Schools and the YMCA. So I went to the public schools and they gave me the 1st through 5th graders. And I went to the YMCA, and went to Robbie Gill, and I went to the executive director down in St. Michael's, and they gave me the facilities. Actually, I got the facilities of the kids from the school district, and I got the liability insurance and the adult supervision, that sort of thing. So we have those chaperones from the YMCA. I went out and recruited high school kids, STEM leaders, we call them.
Now, one thing that I think people might not understand is that these were kids who had fallen behind in the school year before, that they had just finished. And they were supposed to go to summer school to catch up.
There are 3 qualifiers. One, the kids, the 1st and 5th graders scored 20 points below the mean in their standardized testing. They qualify for 2 school-provided meals, and they effectively flunked the last year.
Was that the mean of 500 or the mean for the school?
No, the kids get, I'm not a teacher, but they get standardized tests. So they scored badly. I'll leave it at that, okay? So I recruited STEM leaders, high school kids, to answer Claudia's question, middle schoolers and high schoolers to be our instructors. I call them STEM leaders, not instructors. And, so what I do with these STEM leaders is I oversee them the way my father taught me how to swim. Now, I'm an old guy. I don't know what I had for breakfast this morning. Actually, I do, but that's it. But as 3 years old, my dad took me to a large public pool. He grabbed me by my wrists. He swung me as hard as he could into the deep end, and he walked away.
And you learned how to swim.
And I remember doggy paddling to the edge of that pool. And that's what I do with these young people is, I probably get arrested, but I allow them to succeed and fail. So we financed like last year, we raised $8,300 to feed kids and to uniform the STEM leaders, to buy classroom materials. They developed the curriculum. Once a month, I kind of get into looking at what they were doing. And if they need a little course correction, I do it, but I don't like to micromanage. Logistics, we fed kids, we fed them, we coordinated with the schools. We had a journalism committee, if you want to call it that. We have press releases. If we have time, we'll see a piece that we put in Talbot Spy. And one thing that I still haven't quite figured out yet, that we've been trying to implement a big brother, big sister program after the camp. In other words, follow the kids into the academic year. There are a lot of reasons why this hasn't quite worked out yet, but that gets to another slide that I think is coming up next. So we have successes and challenges. I ask the kids, we debrief all the time, the STEM leaders, what have we done right? What can we do better? And in the Marine Corps, we have a phrase that says improvise, adapt, and overcome. And so we have to adapt on a regular basis. We have to figure out what we can do better. I can tell you in the 7 years we've been running this program, we get a little bit better every year. I had a big aha. And I took a young fellow who was in our first STEM camp, first year, young black fellow, dyslexic, slow reader, et cetera, but there was something brilliant about him. I took him over to the Naval Academy one day, I think at his 7 or 8 year old, and we walked from the faculty parking towards Bancroft Hall. I was going to give him an overview of what it was like to be a midshipman. And the first person we bumped into was a Navy lieutenant commander in khakis, and he had all these colorful things over his left pocket and a gold thing above it. I happen to know a little bit about that because I was a commissioned officer. And so I said, excuse me, sir, have you got just a moment? So I'm on the right-hand side of this young black kid. And this fellow said, yeah, this gold thing over here designates me as a naval aviator. I fly airplanes on and off aircraft carriers, really big ships. And then all these colorful ribbons tell people where I've been and what I've done. And I'm watching out of the corner of my eye, I'm looking at this young black kid. And Lynn and I have been working with this kid for 3 years. And in 20 minutes,
You're forgetting to mention
he
that,
made a bigger impact in 20 minutes than we did in 3 years.
and this gentleman who stopped to talk happened to be a black lieutenant
Oh, I
commander.
forgot to mention that, yeah. He happened to be, so my big aha was that I needed to find more STEM leaders, not guys with pink skin and red hair. More STEM leaders that look like the kids that are charged to me. So, I have watched Stand and Deliver, a movie by Jaime Escalante, dozens of times. And he doesn't take any excuses. He didn't. It's a long story, but he took kids from the barrio in East Los Angeles and he put them through AP calculus. He was accused of cheating and doing all this other stuff. He busted their chops. The first year that he had kids go through that, he had 17 kids pass the AP calculus test. Kids that were bilingual from gangs and from poor families. By his 6th year, he had 87 pass the AP exam. And so I think if we set the right expectations, kids will rise to those expectations. The other thing that we learned too is that in each year we teach this lesson is accountability is perhaps even more stronger than the lesson we teach about STEM or science education. And accountability, I'll give it a story because I tell the STEM leaders this, I've got a minute. I tell the STEM leaders this story every time and then they have to translate it. So I was about to deploy a number of years ago. And the name was 3 days liberty, 3 days vacation, go home, or do whatever I want to do. So I decided to go home and visit my folks for 3 days, 2.5 days. I didn't know I was going to get back home stateside. One of my buddies, Lance From, decided to get some few more jumps in. And on his second day, he made a low altitude jump. And Lance's chute failed to deploy. He deployed his reserve and it fouled inside his main. Who is accountable for Lance Fram's death? The Army sergeant that packed our chutes or Lance Fram? It's Lance, because he didn't check his chutes before he entered the aircraft. And so the lesson we teach these little kids, elementary school and high school kids, is that they're accountable for their own life's paths. Not the teachers they don't like, not because their mom and dad don't tutor them enough at home, not because the school district isn't doing the right kind of job. They're accountable. And you know what? In this last year, we had the STEM leader, big kids don't tell little kids that like this, a lot of nightmares. But they translate that into believable accountability stories. And so we had a little first grader this year, named was Phoenix. And they asked him, so give us an example of how you're accountable. This kid didn't hesitate. His hand shoots up in the air and he says, well, I'm accountable for my backpack. And if it goes missing, it's on me. Nice kids said, it gets back to what they told me at the Office of Naval Research. Don't discount the fact that these kids can't understand really important concepts or big words. I wish I had time to show you the video, but I'm out of time. But I think this gets back to what Hans says. It needs to be personal, and we need to do it. Don't talk about it, do it. And so I didn't let those bureaucrats in Alexandria put me off. I did it. And that's what we need to do with so many things that are facing our communities in this country. Just do it. You know, I hate to use a Nike and slogan, but just do it. Anyway, that's I'm over my time.
I do have a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
It sounds like you and Lynn are doing this primarily. Do you have other people that are part of your group that help you?
The teenagers, for sure.
This is a
But
project.
usually through those as well.
Yes.
You're the only adult.
So you're the two adults that are driving the program.
Oh, it's not me, it's all Bob. I'm just the one in the background going, hey, have you thought about doing such
Okay,
and such?
well, so this is a one-man show.
No, it's not. It's a dozen and a half high school kids making this happen.
Whom you.
I'm a little bit of the glue, but they get the job done. And by the way, one more slide. I think this is a really important concept too. Okay, meet the person accountable for your life, okay, yada, yada, yada. Okay, we make those kids look at all those mirrors and they repeat that phrase. I am accountable for my choices, my success, my action, my words, my grades.
Good.
We're gonna show you the video, but I don't have that.
I have the link here.
Do we have time to do that?
If you'd like to.
How long is it?
How long is the video?
3 minutes.
Yeah, let's do it.
Then let's do it.
By the way,
While we're waiting for, the other question is, where does the financing come from?
the kids go find it.
They go door to door?
Business, skills,
I
friends
tell
and
them,
family.
get the money. They develop the budget. How much are we gonna need for meals? How much we need for uniforms? How much we need for educational class materials? They develop that budget. And then I say,
They learn
how are you gonna rise?
They learn how to
And
practice what they're going to
they
say, they
put
learn how to
together,
send thank you notes.
GoFundMe's. They've gone out to high net worth value individuals and I throw them into the deep end. And I make them really uncomfortable and say, get it done. Because mom and, I shouldn't say, I've never been a parent. I fear that too many parents don't say, just get it done. Don't bother me with the details, get it done.
Or mom and
and then
dad
the
go and
schools-
sell this stuff.
Yeah.
And I hear this from
Bob,
schools
let's
too,
get
that we
started
don't
with
challenge
this.
these kids. Okay, here we go. We got sound? Oh, it's coming on.
That is fine, it's okay. Oh.
My name is Louis Lentz. I go to 7 schools over the bridge, and hometown is Easton.
My name is David Renee. I go to the Gunston School in Centerville, Maryland, and I live right here in Easton.
My name is McCartan Salah Selassie. I go to the Gunston School and I live here right in Easton, Maryland.
And I was always interested in physics and biology, and I absolutely love the program. I love teaching the kids. I love getting them excited about it, being able to organize the actual experiments and plan things and think of things 4 or 5 months in advance, and test them, and see how exciting they were. I just thought that was the job for me, and I decided to go with that.
From a young age, I've always been interested in building things, deconstructing things, kind of like what Lewis said. Always had a passion for critical thinking and just kind of seeing how things worked. And so when I heard the opportunity from Mr. DeGore and through my college guidance counselor, I knew that this would be a really great opportunity to share my love with the kids and kind of give back to my community as well.
Ever since I was a kid, my dad always told me whenever I face a problem, not to just give up and always to improvise, and that way to improvise with through science and technology. And I always found a way to figure stuff out through those things.
I learned, since it's an opportunity for high school students alike to come together and lead the program, Mr. DeGore takes a really great step back from the program to let us as high schoolers lead and take charge with the program, which I think is really unique. You know, it's not just another adult telling you what to do and giving you the resources, but he'd rather let us go through the steps of figuring out how to develop as leaders individually.
I think Damien's describing, there was a type of leadership lab that all the high schoolers went through. And I would say the biggest lesson that I learned was that you lead by example. And so
This year, I was appointed as the head financial chair, and part of my responsibility was raising money for the camp for materials and food.
So I was the senior staff leader this year, so I was in charge of organizing all of the 15 other high school students that were in charge of leading this camp and making sure that things flowed nicely, make sure we were reaching out to the proper people to make sure we had the right resources and facilities as well to make sure that this could all happen.
And the way I did this was by starting a GoFundMe, which was the majority of the money we raised. And I also met with the multiple donors. Not only was I the head financial chair, I was also a STEM leader like the others. And like Lewis mentioned earlier, it's a leadership laboratory. Not only were these kids learning from us, we were also learning and honing our leadership skills. And I really believe every single person involved in that camp grew in some way. I remember the first or second day, I'm not sure, we asked, one of the key takeaways of this camp was accountability, and that's one thing we wanted to teach these kids. And when we asked what was accountability, one kid said that I am accountable for keeping my backpack. And we couldn't tell that this kid was 4 years old, and that response surprised all of us. And since after the camp, I've been taking that kid I'm mentoring this kid through the Big Brother program. And ever since then, that's the one thing I remember.
Personally, I want to become a naval flight officer through the Naval Academy. This year, for the STEM field, I'm loading up my course as much as possible, and I plan to major in chemistry.
This year, I'll be applying to the Naval Academy in hopes to either be a naval aviator or a naval special warfare operator.
I'd like to not go the Naval Academy route, but pursue a postgraduate degree in computer science, either a master's degree or a PhD.
These kids are our future, and I believe what we teach them right now will not only affect their futures, but as a society.
Just as a form of measurement, this last May, 3 young men from Easton graduated from the United States Naval Academy. We currently have 3 there right now from Easton. Damien, the senior STEM leader, is being recruited by MIT, Caltech, and Cornell. Lewis already has his letter of assurance from the United States Naval Academy, the earliest I've ever seen. And McConan will be undergoing his congressional interviews here in another 2 weeks or so. And he's the strongest special warfare candidate I've experienced in 43 years.
I would
It's
add,
crazy. He's a smart and savvy guy, but he knows on Friday he's jumping out of a perfectly good airframe, prove that he can do it. In the wintertime, since it's been 14.99, 30 more seconds, he goes out into the watershed of the Chesapeake in cold water to test himself against hypothermia. And he routinely is weapons qualified on 18 weapons, on top of being at the top of his class constant.
so I would only add, and this is a way of wrapping this up, that when Bob first started this, it had been how many years since we had a youngster from the
33
Eastern
years.
Shore?
33.
So,
Congratulations.
Good on you, Bob.
thank you, Bob.
Yeah.
And now we go from here to, can you push the clicker over to the ladies? Yeah.
Oh, you started it. You started it. You started it.
So now we'll talk about plastic bags.
And why did
Yes,
that?
just a second, he's gotta find your PowerPoint. It's the one that has kind of a funny name. It's not that one. It was the third one. It's the long name, right? That's the one on the bottom.
It's a PowerPoint.
Start with EFE.
Yeah, it's not, it's a PDF,
Oh.
so.
Well, honestly, I was gonna say, I could, because the clicker won't work with that, but I can download it probably as a PowerPoint. If the computer, this computer will
I
work.
adapted my own.
Well, I think it's in the PowerPoint, it's in the PDF.
Okay.
I noticed that,
So,
thank you.
that's okay.
Can you enlarge that?
Yeah,
so
I can-
that
I
it
will
is-
scroll.
That wasn't inside
Oh,
here,
yeah.
structured
Yeah.
that way.
On my
Which I-
computer, it just shows
it
one at
helps,
a time
it should
on
help.
the pages, so I figured.
Right.
That's fine. Okay,
Okay, well, I'm Elaine Tama, this is Marianne Arnold. I'm gonna go first because I was the one that actually started the whole thing. And the reason I started was because I went over to Delaware to Rehoboth Beach in the summer of 2021. And I went into the grocery store and there were no plastic bags in the whole state of Delaware. So I came back here to Easton and I went grocery shopping and I just got a little more and more annoyed that Maryland had not passed a law yet, even though we knew that, or I knew that Delaware, New York, Montgomery County, DC, a lot of places I was familiar with, had passed various types of legislation to try to limit the disbursement of free plastic bags So I came back, I just wanted to get one person that would work with me on it, and that one person was Peggy Ford. Peggy Ford, whose husband John Ford was the former president of the town council. And all I needed was one person. And Peggy said, I will work with you on that. And I said, thank you, Peggy, that's all I need. Now I'll get going. I didn't know what I was gonna do, but, so, we started with, the Obakra thing. And we think that probably a lot of what we've done will fit into that model, although we are more of a political lobbying group. That's how I would describe our group. And so it's not, doesn't really fit perfectly into this because we really moved from objective background and analysis directly to action and fluid action and give and take and changing course quite often. I mean, that's the way politics is. It's basically human beings trying to work with each other or against each other. So next slide, please.
What was your stated objective?
Our stated objective was to get the town of Easton to pass an ordinance to prohibit stores from distributing free plastic bags or plastic bags. Carry out plastic bags.
Single-use plastic.
Single-use plastic bags. So we had one simple objective. And I think that's one reason for our success is that we stuck to that one thing. Because if you go into the plastics realm, you would be lost forever. And then okay, I'm gonna turn this over to Mary now. I'll just say, I got together a group, our core group was 7 or 8 people. 2 of the people in my group, Mary and Arnold, Sue Hauser, I met in Chesapeake Forum class run by Lynn Randle on native plant landscaping. And they were all wonderful, dedicated. We had meetings all the time on Zoom. I got a Zoom account. And we just worked towards getting this ordinance passed, this one thing.
Yeah, and when we, if somebody thought, well, we should also do this and we should also do that, we knew we only had so many of us, and we would gently guide the person, and say maybe another time or whatever like that. We just kept very strategic. And so what we Elaine identified a mentor, so that helped us. Sierra Club. They have been coaching individual communities that are trying to start plastic bag bans in their locality. So what the representative from the Sierra Club told us, Martha Ainsworth, she said, go and get data. So you're gonna start present an argument, data helps. So just almost immediately we did shopper surveys, and then we started talking about how to approach the council. Our first, we had a number of different publics to convince, and the first line was getting to the council members. Elaine spoke with, and we always had at least two members of our group go and speak to the council members. We found a champion in Megan Cook. Before I go on, Annabelle Lesher, also a member of Plastic Free. You just never know when you're going to find a plastic free person in the crowd. Yeah. So she told us, well, go for it. See if you can convince the other ones. And so we met with each of them individually just to present our idea and just feel them out. And so, and it was really over the course of the 10 months that we were on the project, it was educating all along.
I just wanted to object that in the very beginning, I went and downloaded a map of the town with all the wards in color, got it printed. And I realized that all our big grocery stores are within the town limits, because versus going to the county council, which we all know what was going. The county council was embroiled in many other problems. So I decided, let's just go with the town, and that was why Peggy and I and Megan Cook, who gave us the really good advice, meet individually with the town council members, let them get to know you, be friendly, you know, be courteous, just say, here we are, some nice ladies, we'd like to do this nice thing.
That's right, we were just the grannies,
Yeah,
just the grannies.
concerned about you, the people who are alive now, the little children and the ones who follow them.
Right.
So, and we, you know, we kept a very, well, we were just us.
I made sure I had one person in our group from each ward. So that when we did the Zoom meeting with the council person for the ward, we had an actual constituent there. And it was easy to get some boards and hard to get one of them, but I finally strong-armed a person I knew, said, you've got to come to this meeting with me. So that was our first step. And then one of the council members suggested, well, you know, the next step is you do a presentation. You give a presentation to the council. And so what we're going to show you now quickly is we'll go through the slides that Marion and I put together, and we presented this to the council in March.
Yes, and all the pictures are from around the area. And well, and then I'm saying that because we made it a local problem.
Yep.
We want to demonstrate that we're all in this together. We can do this, there is something we can do. The plastic pollution problem is overwhelming, but we can do something about plastic bags here. And then also kind of challenge Easton, you know, we are, let's join the growing ranks of Merlin communities who are addressing the problem. So we stated our goal.
Are there a lot of other communities that are mostly on the other side of the Bay Area?
Well, Chestertown,
That was 10 years ago.
Westminster, Salisbury is coming up in their city council
They're just going to make
meeting
a
in
demonstration.
November.
They're going to make a presentation in November. Yeah.
Where else?
So this makes a really good example then of how making change in one community then seemed like it morphed into other communities as well. So you get calls from people there?
Yes, in fact, you know, after the proposal passed and became law, we've been kind of on a little circuit.
People keep asking us.
You know, people just asking us what we did.
But see, I'm a member of the Sierra Club Maryland Zero Waste Team. And she mentioned Martha Ainsworth, who was our mentor, leader, and guide. Martha was the one who gave us the structure for the shopper survey, and you'll see this here. And so that Zero Waste Team, which meets once a month, has somebody from like Anne Arundel County, somebody from Montgomery County, and they're working together to do whatever they can to try to deal with, I mean, this is a huge problem. I mean, plastic.
So and now you've got pictures to show what the
Yeah,
problem is.
and so, yeah, and then as we went through the slides, you know, just pointing out where, you know, these are really, these are right in your neighborhood. Just this, and later, actually, we were involved in, you know, involved in some locations. But, you know, everywhere you go, you find plastic bags lurking in trees and fields and in the chop tank. You pull up a fishing net, and look at that.
Wow.
And it's an interesting, simple factoid. Plastic bags sink below the surface. Plastic bags, by the number, plastic will go to certain levels or all the way down to the bottom. Plastic bags hover 2 or 3 feet down, get caught in netting and winches and motors for fishing. So we found, so when we were looking around for groups to support us, it wasn't, we knew we needed, of course, it's obvious we would bring in environmental groups, but we needed to bring in others. And that was our getting the watermen. We had the president of the Talbot Watermen Association ally with us and speak at the hearings. Anyway, so we'll get to that. But anyway, so we made the argument about, even when you recycle plastic, you can't put it in Easton Town recycle. Because this is what happens to plastic bags. These are the separation machines in the recycling center, and they just get jammed up, and they have to stop the whole thing. They have to pull out all the plastic bags. If you continue to put plastic bags into recycling, they don't know, and it's so confusing. You have number 1, 2, and 5, and 7, and you can't. In the end, even number 1, where you think that's a surefire, that can get recycled. 2 different types of ones might not be recycled better. Because it says in 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, whatever they describe it as shape and form, but not the formulation. So anyway, it's a big mess. Okay, that's one.
And then the plastic bags also disintegrate differently?
Yes, that depends. And, and the whole idea of what's compostable and what's biodegradable, those are
Generally, they may, plastic bags may eventually break into smaller and smaller particles. They say in the water, they never go away.
And the microplastics
Yeah.
has become a huge issue.
Microplastics,
Yeah.
right.
Well, and isn't it a huge issue with plastic bags, that material itself? It's not something that can be practically, it's not very marketable to a recycling company to actually take the time, effort, and money to invest in trying to recycle it. So that, at least from my understanding, that's a huge part of it, is that this stuff that does get recycled, out of all the stuff that's recycled, I've heard, I think it's only around 9-10% actually makes it through the process that people believe it would go through, because the rest of it, if it's not a needed resource that can easily be, stripped and sold and those kind of things, then it gets wasted even if people are still in the bins or whatever for recycling.
bottom line is recycling, making new plastic is cheaper than recycling. So, so there's all kind of issues with plastic. So, we did our research and we talked about that, and then we just wanted to present two points. Let's do something about it. We'll just, no plastic bags at point of sale, and charge for basically paper bags.
And when we gave this presentation in March, Mary and I were laughing because we looked at this slide and we said, oh my God, we actually got this.
Yeah.
It actually happened. That's what happened.
You got that. That's what the town of Easton got. A law that had those two
Yeah.
pieces to it.
That's the law that was passed, basically.
And did you come up with the second part of it by talking to retailers?
No, the second part was partly Sierra Club telling us, look, if you don't have a charge for paper bags, everybody just opts to go get free paper bags.
Right.
And she was saying, the impact on the environment of the cutting down the trees and making paper, so if we could get the retailers to charge.
And they keep the
Initially.
10 cents, right?
But the second thing is that the Maryland Retailers Association suddenly, a lady from the Maryland Retailers suddenly showed up during our hearing, which was not what we were here. And she stood up and said, I represent the Maryland Retailers Association, and we would like to see a charge for 10 cents for paper bags. And she gave an economic argument. Because the plastic bags cost 2 cents. Right. The paper bags cost the retailers 10, 15, whatever it is. So yeah, it was.
We don't want to make it an economic hardship for the retailers.
Yes. And that helped our case a lot to have her.
But really, both of those things help to make a behavior change. So that people would say, I'm not paying for paper, and if I don't have a plastic bag, well, I'm bringing my own bag or my box or whatever. People do that. We call that we also talked about the Aldi model. You can go to Aldi or you can go to Costco or BJ's, and it's the same thing. You bring your own bags. So we just extend that to all the grocery stores because we want to do something about, it's like the first line on the plastic problem is to just start letting go where it ends up in the trees and the bushes and inside of the fish and the birds and us.
Good question.
So Claudia has a question. Oops, sorry, you're.
Unmute.
Please, go ahead.
What was standing in the way? I mean, it sounds, in this day and age, the topic sounds so intuitive. And yes, we still use plastic bags, but I think just about everybody gets it, that this cannot continue. Did you find any serious opposition?
Mostly with the business community. The Chamber of Commerce came out against a plastic bag ban. They didn't really, I guess they just didn't want to make that change. They thought that it would be a hardship, and plastic bags are the cheapest option.
Some business people don't like people to tell them what to do. That was
Mostly that.
don't tell us what to do.
How did you address consumer concerns? Like, I reuse my bags. They're great for picking up dog poop.
Oh, there we go. I was gonna say cat owners, but pet owners also.
Yeah.
They came up and asked probing questions about why we would want to get rid of plastic bags. But you can still buy plastic bags, and they're those semi-compostable,
Right.
doggy bags, and I think people just got used to having them, and they just didn't want to change their habits. So
Yeah, and some people like getting free bags, and if they get a free bag, they don't have to buy a box of bags when they do, when they go.
Yeah, because you use it for your
They're waste
trash can
baskets.
too, and waste,
Yeah.
But the thing is, you can reuse that bag for 50 times if you want. But once you throw that bag away, it's going to sit in the landfill, or it might end up in a tree someplace if the truck dumping the garbage into the landfill. It's a windy day, so then that ends up in the water or whatever, and it breaks down ultimately into these little bits that get into the fish and get into the environment.
So it's a
you
big
really
education.
want to, you really want to get, yes.
Now, are you going to continue the education process
Okay,
for consumers?
yeah, we just wanted to get to the data part.
Yeah,
So we did want, we suggested to the town council that it's in their comprehensive plan to be stewards of the environment. You use stewardship also in your presentation, it's the same argument. And and that they, in fact, there's a business reason for it. It's difficult to sell waterfront development and lifestyle associated with living on or near the water if the water is degraded. So, that's already written into the law here. So they need to take that seriously. Okay. So then we did present data, and Elaine did that part.
yeah, these were some of the laws that were in effect when we did go before the council.
Yes, and you notice that the tax here, it's a charge there, and
We can't do a tax in Easton because we are a municipality. The county could do a tax. And by tax, I mean they could keep 1 cent, which is what goes on in Montgomery County. And you can see there, Howard County. And the city of Baltimore, but because we're a town, we couldn't do a tax. But we can require that stores charge, but they get to keep all the money.
okay.
Yeah, so,
And because of the guidance that we got from Sierra Club, we were able to show information about what's going on and what other communities have been doing.
so this was our data that we presented, that surveys that were done in all these other places showed this enormous reduction and change in shopper behavior. I mean, literally overnight. And New Jersey, by the way, just passed a law this summer. So if you go to New Jersey, there are no plastic bags and there are actually no paper bags. I haven't gone there yet, but I have some relatives.
Bring your own bags. BYOB.
Look at Westminster.
Yeah.
85, almost 86% down to 0.6.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's impressive. So then, we had pie charts. And, and this is the survey. This is the result of the shopper survey we started with initially. And, you can see the mint green, that's where those people are gone out of Harris Teeter with plenty of plastic bags.
We went out and sat in the parking lots or tried to look unobtrusive, standing right near the door with our little tick marks.
The door pulled down this way, French foot route.
Wow.
Yeah, we did our own survey.
You know, it's handy being the granny group, so.
Yeah.
Nobody
We're
nobody worries about
harmless and
you.
invisible.
And then another chart.
And then this one, we talked about the Aldi model. We just would like to show that this is a store that's pretty popular around here, and it's growing chain, and you don't bring your bag there, and it's all working, and your pets are taken care of. So, okay, the next one.
I think we better hurry through these.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's keep going.
And then, we have some
Keep
pet
going.
facts, okay?
Yeah. And that was the end of our presentation. So that was in March. And then the next thing that happened was in your model, you talk about an action plan in the two different models. After we did that, we literally, and I'm sure Dan may agree, I don't know, we groped our way along every step of the way. I just call it groping in the dark. Like, I don't understand how this council works. I don't know who introduces a bill. I don't know what happens when that person introduces a bill. And we would just have to ask questions every step of the way. There were no written, it's not like Congress where, your congressman says, oh, a congressperson introduces a bill and then it goes to this committee and then it goes. This is a small town and there's an awful lot that you don't know and you're not going to know, and there's probably conversations going on between council members, between the president, who was our advocate, thank goodness, Megan Cook. So anyway, I gave them a bill. I gave them a draft bill in March based on the template I got from the Sierra Club. And then the next couple of months, we were meeting with the town council members individually.
We had a public hearing.
And then finally, we had the public hearing. And we were all shaking. I was shaking. I was drinking. I couldn't drink beer, but I was drinking anything I could drink. And we had a hearing. And the hearing went, they were very, very nice to us. It really was a friendly
They were
hearing.
very, very open to it. But, we did go after our audiences. We knew that we had we had the
Petition.
Chautauqua County,
Petition.
Jeff Harrison came and talked at the opening of the public hearing. We had the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, Al Gerard, he spoke. And then people, we said we had we were able to accumulate, we did tabling events, we accumulated contact information, and we had a nice email list of supporters that we would urge to come to the meetings and know those about that. Come to the meetings, and then we would say after the meeting what happened, and just kind of kept up that kind of energy and the forward movement. We did letters to the editors, just trying to keep it in the air, various subjects that Spy was very good at writing the articles.
She
was
wrote.
a Star Democrat.
Marion wrote
And
a
then,
lot of wonderful articles.
yeah, I had fun writing. I had fun writing all
I
that.
thought one of the most impactful things you all did, and it's a lesson to be learned and applied elsewhere, was that, as you said, Jeff Harrison, the president of the Tulsa Watermen's Association, spoke up. And the point is that he was not an expected person. This is part of the environmental effort, plastic bags, so grannies would be expected, and now CBF, Alan Gerard would be expected, and all the normal candidates would be there. But to have somebody step up who's perceived to be not one of those players
Right.
really has a disproportionate impact.
Yes, he really is our hero. And we were also able to get, because we wanted to address as many communities as possible, We were also lucky to have Richard Potter from the NAACP come and speak at one of our public hearings. So we always had somebody at a public hearing that would bring an impact and represent some group. We also prepared we knew that the Chamber of Commerce was going to come out against the proposed law, so we did a video. We went around and found our set of business leaders who went on video, either as a still photo or as speaking, saying why they were in favor of ban. So when Chamber of Commerce got up, they could say, well, none of our businesses support it, but I just presented 10 people who.
Aren't you sneaky little grandmas?
Well, we are, you just can't tell.
How many hours in total of you had 8 people involved?
About 8 total, and I think the thing was we had good karma, or a good group, a good tight group. We had one objective. It was very, very simple, and we kept up the pressure, and the town council members knew we were not going away. I mean, we were coming to every single meeting with our bags. And
So give me an estimate, how many hours per person do you think had to be spent to make this happen?
we didn't
I
really.
think for us, it was a full-time job.
Yeah.
And various other members.
Hours?
Hours.
I was working basically full-time. I was back at work in my cubicle at TV.
Scheming Brandy.
So Marion and I were in communication all the time, because
We were
she's our
neck to neck.
public relations person, and she would call me at noon and say, well, I just wrote another little article for the Spy this morning.
The thing, I'm listening to this and you're saying you had to kind of grope your way along. Well, I come from a corporate environment. In a corporate environment, you get one shot. That's why I do this Barker thing, because if you're lucky, you get one shot, and if you don't give them what they need right there and then, you're done. So you had in a way an opportunity to just
Bill.
Yeah, okay, so let's move along now.
keep plugging away.
Yeah, thank you very, very
You're
much.
welcome.
What
Thank you
an
for
enlightening
inviting us.
view.
Bravo, you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah.
yes. And
It was a great council, they actually were open to thinking about it. And we just had a very supportive town coming up, where can I sign?
Wow.
It was super. It was just, so it just kept us really ginned up and got us through the whole process. We just thought, well, if we don't make it, we don't make it, but.
What's your next project?
Yeah, what are you gonna do next?
I want them to come work for Chesapeake Forum.
Yeah.
Well, we have to work on the rollout now, because
That's
it's
March,
it's April, yeah.
Yeah, April
So
2nd.
we're gonna help the town with the rollout, and that's the education part.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's other economic development, Easton, EEDC.
To me, the next thing is the whole recycling, the
Yeah,
whole
and then-
recycling issue
Yeah.
for the county.
Yep.
That's a county.
Now, here's a question with the bags. Does this apply to all retailers in Talbot County or in certain town limits?
The
or-
town limits of Easton, which covers most of those.
Okay, well, we need to give Dan some.
Right, it's Easton Open. All right, there.
Okay, so hats off to the very worthy efforts that have been accomplished by you all. And Todd hit the nail on the head, just do it, is what Reset Lakeside and Talbot Integrity Project's about. I would like to report to you that there was a preconceived process and there was a model of how we were going to do this and what have you, and none of that is so. Some of the steps that were outlined there were actually were in effect accomplished, but not through pre-planning and some organized effort. And the current matter that I'm referring to is this initiative called Reset Lakeside. And it is really a sub-task or objective within this broader effort to make a material change in Fulton County to the end of having our county government pay more fidelity to the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan is the underlying master plan that is based on citizen input, and our plan talks about a rural community and rural quality of life. It doesn't mean no growth, but it constrains growth within the towns, and it's really quite a good comprehensive plan. And in my opinion, having watched things over the last 2 or 3 administrations, at the county council level, the commitment to that really had fallen away, and the comprehensive plan had been perceived largely as an obstacle to be gotten around or bypassed often if the county council people wanted to achieve something. It didn't happen to work with the comp plan, find a workaround. The Lakeside project, in my awareness, like most people in the county, I'm talking to a year ago, 2 years ago, it was all pretty vague. I know there's a big project down there that had been approved long ago and ain't awful. I happen to have a background in commercial real estate and real estate matters from the Western Shore. I'm a Baltimore guy and had spent 40 years in real estate. 40 years is enough time wherever you live that you see changes over that time. So I had seen the changes in Baltimore County and Harford County and Howard County. When I was in college, I worked one summer for the Rouse Company, just as Columbia was starting, you know, and it was all the architect's drawings and what have you. And now you go out to Howard County and you live in Prince George's County. Anyway, the development, what comes with development is an homogenization of the world we live in. And you can get off a plane in any town and be in, you know, the same shopping center with the same vendors and the same kinds of things. And Fulton County is truly a unique place. We all know that, we all give it lip service. My own view is a lot of people who have always lived here take it for granted and appreciate its uniqueness less than people who have a different frame of reference, who recognize how special it is. At any rate, so I don't live down near Lakeside, I live out on St. Michael's Road, but I had watched the approval process in 2020 when the Lakeside project was brought by the developer to the Fulton County. Let me cut to the chase to say that I, because of my background in real estate, I guess, and my interest in the environment, involved with shore rivers and what have you, clean water is a function of what happens on the land. What happens on the land goes downhill. And I have been involved in some years in the past with TPA and its commitments to the same kinds of things I'm describing here. So out of that, I had some awareness of this. So anyway, I happened to watch this. And watching the approval process, it just didn't feel right and smell right. Because in front of the planning commission, there were, the entire discussion was exclusively about the wastewater treatment issues at Lakeside. And at neither the planning commission nor the county council was there any material discussion about all the other aspects of this and any other project having to do with the impact, and this is all part of the comprehensive plan, the impact on our traffic, congestion, schools, taxes, sheriff's department. You know, where's all that discussion? Well, it just didn't happen. And it essentially didn't happen because the project was presented in 2020 as this was already approved 2 decades ago. This is ancient history. All those approvals were given. And this is pro forma. We had to deal with the wastewater thing, so let's just, slam down. And so if it was said once, it was said 100 times. This was all approved long ago. And the tell for me was at one point in this planning commission meeting, the developer's attorney, I believe, or a representative of the developer, said, listen, we don't even really need to go through this because we had the approvals before and we're going to get the approvals again. So we're really just accommodating the county to keep the paperwork straight here at the county level. That for me was a red light. Now, I was not a participant in any of that. I was just an observer, a lot of it on television, during COVID. Flash forward, the developer got this approval from county council from the county planning commission, which determines that it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. Those are the words of art. A big project like this has to come from the planning commission to say, yes, this is consistent with that. If and only if the planning commission says that, the county council can adopt it. If the planning commission says it's not consistent, doesn't matter. The county council cannot override it. So they got their approvals. And they got they being the developer, a few months thereafter, got a permit, a discharge permit from Maryland Department of Environment to discharge the wastewater effluent from the big new spray irrigation plant you've heard about. Huge new plant down there. But lo and behold, Shore Rivers, God bless them, Matt Pluta and the Chesapeake Legal Alliance, who deserves a lot of credit, noted that the final terms of the final permit that was issued after the approvals were somewhat different than the preliminary tentative permit that had been reviewed by everybody. Okay, the term bait and switch was used a lot, and it was an erosion of the environmental protections, but it wasn't like this. It was like this. I mean, the point was nobody really knew how much it was, but it was surely different. And Shore River sued to remand the permit back to MDE for a new public hearing. Because at the very least, they needed to give the public an opportunity to comment on these different features. Well, when that came to my attention, I decided this is an opportunity to use that phenomenon to really not only should it go back to MDE for a reconsideration, but it really ought to come back to Talbot County for a reevaluation also, because the planning commission in particular and the county council ultimately was also evaluating this wastewater treatment. That's all they had talked about. They hadn't talked about any of the other stuff. So that was in the spring of last year. And so I had proposed a petition, actually, the county council to rescind their approval. And at that time, the rules of procedure for the county council was a citizen could petition. It's right there in the rules. The county council refused to let me do that, and I had to sue them to go in front of the county council, and that took about 6 months. And it was in that 6 months that construction at Lakeside started. Okay, so
Yeah, because weren't they given provisional approval to start building until something happened with the plant?
The answer is no. What happened is, to answer your question, let me think this through. The sewer discharge permit is what had been remanded back to MDE. But that big sewer plant, if you remember, the new one that they're proposing, deals with everything after the first 120 homes. Phase one, the first 120 homes hook up to the existing trap wastewater treatment plant.
Which is insufficient.
And that wasn't being remanded back. And since the county wouldn't agree with my petition to rescind anything, the status quo was they could proceed with phase one. And that's where we sit today. They are proceeding with what you see down there is phase one. And it's going to be hooked up, it is hooked up to the existing trap wastewater treatment plant. And the remand back to MDE, they still haven't gotten and this is now been 18 months, they still haven't gotten the reissuance of the discharge permit together. I'm way down in the weeds here, I apologize. So to the point of how did things happen? When I really decided I needed to smoke out what it was that was worrying me. And I'm not a lawyer, but I have an awful lot of experience in real estate law over 50 years. And OCD must have kicked in because I delved into all the documents and with the help of some people around the community who were, some of whom were retired lawyers, and a lot of people have interest in this, particularly people who were in sort of the legal business and what have you. So anyway, I investigated them. More and more I investigated, the worse it seemed to me. And I brought the matter to the attention of the planning commission by what I brought to their attention was new information having to do with the wastewater treatment plant down the track, the existing plant. As I just said, the existing homes can hook up to that plant. Well, originally, none of the new information, by definition, I guess, new, had been aware of, the planning commission was aware of, having to do with its operations and a lot of pollution issues and what have you. And when that information was finally in front of the planning commission, and they really didn't want to hear it, but when they looked at it, he said, this just doesn't work. And they reversed their decision. And they said, that project is not consistent with the Baldwin County Comprehensive Plan. That should have been the end of it right there because it's a prerequisite to the enactment. But the county council refused to acknowledge the planning commission's decision to change their mind. They ignored it. There was last winter quite a bit of conflict at the county council level. God bless Pete Flesher, who carried the ball for us in insisting that the council face up to this decision. It finally came to a climax in March when the council had the climactic vote and decided to ignore the planning commission and let Lakeside proceed as if the planning commission had not changed its mind. And MDE sat on its hands, and because MDE has responsibilities over top of all this. MDE sat passively and let the county council do that. So Lakeside rolling along, and it was outrageous. This comes to just do it, okay? So I was 20 miles away. I had spent my day every waking hour for 8-9 months on this thing, just because, frankly, as a real estate guy, I was pretty angry about how this it's what gives real estate people a bad name. So it was either forget about it or double down. And so I sent out an email to some 150 people around the community who had financial resources that might be appropriate, and essentially said, if nobody else cares about this, that's fine, we'll close it down, Lakeside is going to proceed. But if Talbot County, the people of Talbot County care and don't want to just roll over and let a Western Shore developer, I wouldn't care where he's from, let a developer pull off the fast one, inappropriate permits, get this thing done, and the scale and pace and nature of trap is contradictory to the comp plan, to in effect ruin or be a tipping point, arguably, for a change of the character. If nobody wants, if people step up, I'll fight this thing. And the litmus test was raising a hell of a lot of money for Alston. And I tried to raise $500,000 in 5 weeks, and we raised north of $300,000 in 6. And that was enough. And we, to effect this, I created an entity, new entity, Talbot Integrity Project, you've heard of, and created the entity, collected the money, hired a lawyer, and Talbot Integrity Project and I and 10 people who live on Latrobe Creek, because they needed that for standing. They are the people who own property right where this pollution is happening, all sued MDE. That suit is ongoing, and there's a hearing in December. litigation takes a long while and it's unimaginably expensive. And that's what we're going through now. I haven't mentioned Reset Lakeside and all that
Right.
power. And the point of it is, so the county council in March made, let's say, a bad decision by refusing majority 3-2. And we're not talking institutions, we're talking people. So there were 3 people, council members, who voted against us and for the developer, and 2, including Pete Lesher and Laura Price, who supported our position. Doesn't take a rocket science to recognize that a different way to solve the problem being to reset Lakeside and to change the attitude about development, bigger than Lakeside, attitude about inappropriate development would be to elect the proper people in the county council who will make proper judgments, including they can, as a first point, as a first step of business, they can say, you know, that decision back in March by Talbot County, that was a wrong decision. We are reversing that decision. We're acknowledging Maryland law. We back the planning commission, and we're telling MDE we brought back the planning commission. So to achieve that, we need to have a majority of the county council, and I don't believe it's slim majorities. I would like to see 5 members of the county council elected who will adopt that position and take that step in December. And lo and behold, the candidates, we have, as you know, 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans running for office. The candidates know this story Lakeside, and they get it. I mean, you all may just be hearing it, but they got it. 7 of those 10 candidates agree entirely with Tip's position and have committed, and it's League of Women Voters CPF interview forum, they committed that they would back this kind of bill. So Talbot Integrity's project's objective is to do what we can to have 5 of those 7 candidates elected. And that's what Reset Lakeside's all about. We put this little sign that says nothing but Reset Lakeside all over the Kingdom Come for awareness. It was too little to list names and to explain this stuff. But for the last week and the 2 weeks remaining, we are now crossing over the Rubicon or crossing the point of explaining to everybody what does Reset Lakeside mean? What's that all about? And we're doing that in a very conventional sort of political campaign sort of way. You may have seen some of our large signs which list the candidates, but we also have run ads in the Star Democrat, what their work, and we have more coming. Today, tomorrow, you should each receive in your mailbox a mailer from Talbot Integrity Project explaining this. We have in the last 5 days, we have our website up, which is the point of which was to enable us to run a social media program. So I don't, you can do Facebook, people show me what my grandkids are doing and say, look at this. But for anybody on social media, you should be seeing a lot of ads for Reset Lakeside and things like, what's this all about? Click here, takes you to our website to explain what it's about, kind of thing I was doing. Or who should I vote for? Click here, takes you to our list. So hopefully, in the 14 days remaining, those who are in the world of social media, including, God willing, the young people, because Rise Up Coffee, for example, is strongly, I mean, Tim Curtin loves Talbot County, strongly behind this. And I'm trying to get people who are a lot younger than me to get out there and get the words spread around. So that's what we're doing.
And I guess the measure of that will be if sometime really next year you get a council that says no.
The measure for Talbot Integrity Project is, will be known about November 11th. It's about 3 days afterwards.
You have a question from Claudia.
Sorry, yes, Claudia.
Yeah, thank you. This is, I think this is another great presentation. I'm just looking at the website, Lakeside website, and they are already offering homes for sale.
Yes.
Is that their way of just ignoring the work that's going on, or how do you interpret that?
Great question. And indeed, one of our headlines in our social media thing is, is it too late or it's not too late? And that's one of the things we're stressing, because the pushback, the one pushback we most encounter is, what are you talking about? It's already done. It's too late. Well, it's not too late, okay? They have built homes down here, down there. During the period that we were trying to get this thing rescinded, they went crazy, building as fast as they could. Basically writ large, the idea of better to ask forgiveness than permission. And they proceeded as rapidly as they could just to create the fait accompli. And they knew they were taking the risk. And indeed, Pete Lesher has an affidavit, is one of the exhibits in our court case, that the developer's attorney met with Pete last August before any houses had been built, saying they knew they were proceeding at their own risk, considering this. So that's not a bad thing. But the point is, people drive down past that construction and they're shocked at all this new construction. That's 25 homes out of 2,500 homes.
That's just plain
That's
crazy.
it's not too late, because what we're gonna do is hit the reset button. This isn't the stop button, stop Lakeside. We're not gonna tear those houses down, they're not gonna put soybeans where the asphalt is. We're gonna hit the pause button, stop in place, send it back to the county council for a rediscussion, a reconsideration of all the things they never talked about before. Schools, traffic, the county roads, sheriff's office.
How much money did they get from the developer? Don't they normally ask for, there's some kind of a tax that they add on for the
Good question.
developer?
Well, first of all, that is exactly what needs to be discussed when it comes back. Okay?
Right.
Because people have different understandings. Talbot County does not have an adequate public facilities ordinance, which is what you're really talking about.
Right.
What that ordinance would do is it says, if you don't have adequate public facilities, schools, blah, 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 you can't build your project. But then there's also the sort of kissing cousin of that is impact fees. The developer has to pay the money. Talbot County has minimal impact fees, hardly any.
That's ridiculous.
So the schools are already in capacity. There is no school for Lakeside. One of our social media questions is, where are the Lakeside schools? Well, they haven't been built. They're going to have to be built. And who's going to pay for it is not the developer, the way we're sitting right now. It's all the taxpayers in Talbot County, none of which was discussed.
I do need 3 minutes to close.
I'm done.
So,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Very interesting.
Thank you very much. I think what I get out of it is that we have had, that the process isn't going to get you there. Whatever it is you're complaining about, don't say, well, I went to the Hans's, facilitate dialogue, and if I only do that, it's going to happen. No. You need to have somebody with some passion that can collect some like-minded people and put a lot of work into it. I think any project of any meaningful dimension is going to require that. I think the process that we discussed at the last session can help. It can help particularly when you have the initial, as we did, where you need to get a consensus on, well, what are we going to work on? And your example is so cogent. You need to focus on something. It's what happens too often, and it sounds like you're focusing, and of course you're focusing. What happens so often is the interests are diverse, and then therefore the project gets diverse, and before you know it, it's like
Mud.
It's like a river in the desert running out of water before it gets anywhere. Okay. So the process is only an aid. It is, I think, coming back to our title, change starts with you, and here's how. And I think number one is then I have to find one or two or three people with some passion on a subject to drive it. And it doesn't make any difference if you're groping, it may take longer. Or if you have a very strict process or a corporate environment where you only get one shot, but the work is about the same. In no case can you just assume that you can go and make a one-off presentation and people are all going to stand up and applaud. You know you're going to have resistance. You know you're going to have different interests. So coming back to what we had agreed on as being our common project, which we've run out of time working on, it seems to me the group more or less voted with you. They said, we need to do something with education. Well, let's take the kernel of success that you presented here and build on that.
One way,
As compared to starting a totally different and unrelated effort.
so one thing along those lines that we have started working with the schools to try and figure out, well, we've got a group of older people here, highly educated older people who want help. And how can we do that? So one of the things that we're talking about doing is creating a speakers bureau. There may be a better name for it, but so that we can highlight to the teachers some of the expertise that we have in our community, especially in Chesapeake Forum, so that they can kind of go down this list. Oh, so-and-so can teach a class, come in and help me present what it means to be an engineer at Ford Motor Company. Or so-and-so can tell me how to, just a wide range of such interesting people that we can make available to schools now that they are open to having people coming in. The other thing too is that we discovered that there used to be a very active reading program in St. Michael's, and they lost the grant for a reading instructor who kind of piloted the whole thing. And that's another area where somebody could lift their hand up and say, I really think this is important. They had 30 volunteers that would come in to read to young people, to help get them excited about reading and helping them read the books. And, the libraries could maybe pick that up, and I think some of them have been doing a little bit of that, but maybe that's something that we can help with. So those ideas go back to what we talked about last meeting of, well, let's think of ideas and let's focus on one at a time. So Bob has gotten one going, and now there's the Y is interested in expanding that into other YMCA's. I don't know how well that'll work because Bob wants to step back, not have to be so involved in it, but we'll see. So Hans, thank you for coming back to us to do a follow-on from your last presentation.
Well, thank you, 3 presenters,
Yeah.
3+, I mean.
My goodness, you guys
2%.
really gave us a lot to chew on.
I think that really put so much more meat on the bones of our seminar. The seminar was just to repeat, change can happen, and it's going to start with you, and it's going to take a lot of work.
Yeah.
Right.
So you better have some passion, some fire in your belly, or else you're going to run out of steam before you get very far.
Right,
Yeah.
and it's, as Noel said, not enough to talk about it, you gotta do it.
Yeah.
And you can be successful.
Yeah, and you can.
It's amazing to me how, in all of these cases, how quickly you find other people who are interested in it and you can engage them, which is really marvelous about, I think, something about our community there that where people really want to get involved sometimes and not just jabber
It's
about it.
almost as if people are just waiting, in a way, for somebody to come forward. And you're grumbling and grumbling at home, and oh, I wish somebody would do something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you all have had that experience. I want to be forthright in saying that the Lakeside project has broad support. There are 300 people altogether, Lakeside. And people have been very generous and happy to step up and send you a check.
Right.
Or give you a pat on the back, or go get them kind of thing. But in terms of rolling up sleeves and spending hours doing something, I'm thrilled that others have been more successful than I am in that regard.
Well,
Not that zero, don't misunderstand. But lest anybody walk away thinking, oh, just pick it up and you go find your little people.
yeah, that's a hard one that you're
takes
battling.
time.
Okay.
We
It
noticed
just-
this.
I gotta wonder what some people, old geezers like me, I'm sitting home watching reruns of I Love Lucy, when I could be doing something like your project. Actually, I've been invited on to my next project. So part of this I'm gonna be handing over to the wife to expand the STEM program. And Justin, we need to start talking about that. But the folks over at the airport have asked me to get involved with the aviation careers education. And so many of our kids in America think that they need to go to college. But if you just take a look at aviation, it's just one component, one thing that we do. Not everybody works in the cockpit. We've got people that work on the fuel line, people in aviation mechanics, all of those things. And it might be an interesting way to capture some kids that will stay here on the Eastern Shore instead of moving away because we don't have adequate jobs. So I think that there are a lot of things that we could do, and the big challenge is going to be engaging others to make these opportunities happen. I want to talk to you about it.
I want to talk about your project, which is, in the long run, pays
Talk about yours.
bigger.
Yeah, we love to talk about it.
Yeah, well,
Your project
thank
is, I think the old man who always forget the facts.
you.
Well, you had a great suggestion. You said to me in the early days of this, you said, why don't you just put up a sign in the parking lot? And actually,
Yes.
they do that
Yeah,
in
they do.
Maine, I
And they do.
understand.
Don't forget your bag.
Did you remember your bags?
You do that in your bag,
Yeah.
Don't forget your bag.
So
Yeah.
you can turn right around and go back to your car and get your bag.
Yeah,
Lynn
yeah.
was in charge of a market research project many years ago about seatbelts. And
Oh, yeah.
she can tell the story better than I
It
can.
was part of it was a project I did in my graduate studies at Stanford, and we worked with the legislature to enact a law that you had to wear seatbelts. But the way we got people to actually do it was we started an education program in the schools, in the primary grades. So as a parent, as many of you have been parents, that if you don't put your seatbelt on right away, those kids in the back seat are going, Mom, you need your seatbelt. And that was a really, we did have some really successful campaigns by doing that.
All that
So, thank you very much,
Yeah.
everybody.
Thank you.